Jamaican people.
I left the door.
Oh, listen to them. I'm hot. I'm so hot.
Well, it's because you put two hot girls in a room. What do you think's gonna happen?
Well, I need to just pay more for air conditioning, I guess.
Yeah, in the middle of, I guess the beginning of March.
I think maybe a
First.
bird pooped on my. Okay, so but I have my here. Where is it? Here, my thing. Maybe I should take it off. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
You're gonna start
let's start.
sweating. Isn't it cute how Alyssa and I are matching?
Without trying.
Wow.
We didn't talk
Black
about
and white. Black and white.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go.
Hi guys, thanks for joining. My name is Amanda Armagoss, and this is Essence of History. Today we're going to be talking about the dark secrets of the Founding Fathers.
My name is Alyssa Haber.
And I'm Dr. Abbasi, and I cannot tell you how intriguing this episode of our podcast actually is, because we talk about many of these figures in the history, but there were people like us. They
Actually, really like me because they were my age.
They were pretty young at the time they were our founding fathers.
Yeah.
They were in their 20s, like Hamilton, especially Hamilton. He was a Secretary of State when he was 26.
One of the founding fathers was only 17 or 18.
Yeah.
More, maybe James more.
Well, we called them fathers, founding fathers, but these were truly enthusiastic people who shaped probably one of the greatest nations in the whole history of humankind. And we owe them a lot. And they created a system that will outlast all of us, but as well has proven to be very robust, and creating a system that has survived a lot of up and downs in the history.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to let you guide this, and I just chip in with few of my information from many books that I have read about it.
Okay, well, like you said, the founding fathers were a lot like us. They were human beings. They were not saints. And
Definitely
they
they were not.
definitely have some skeletons in their closet, I guess you could say. Maybe
Literally.
like 17.
Should I start with something very juicy?
Ooh, let's start off
Yeah.
strong.
So when actually Franklin was ambassador to France, Adam visited him, and Adam was from New England, very Puritan and church going and so on. And he was truly actually he was unbelievably upset about that Franklin was sitting with some French people, and a married French woman was sitting on his lap, and they were joking around and they were flirting all the way and so on. And obviously Franklin had affairs with multiple married women.
Yeah, I think, was it Ben Franklin who had like 17 illegitimate children, or
Yeah.
what was that?
Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
it was our good old friend Ben.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, Benji.
Yeah, and this kind of lifestyle, which was not that unusual. Many of the characteristic of our moral come from practical Victorian era. This puristic, like all that our ideas about how the relation should be. French were always a little more loose, and there maybe still are. And they were just living the French life. Like if you go to the cafeteria in the hospital and you have a glass of wine, that people look at you funny. But having a glass of wine in French still is a normal thing.
Mhm.
So you go to work, and then you go have a glass of wine, you go back to work, and so on. This is a different way of life they had then, which was very different from the British, English, Puritan, New England kind of way of life. And Franklin was living it. He was enjoying it. He has multiple affairs with married women and so on. We are not endorsing that, but that was the way of life. And Franklin was absolutely in the middle of it. And Adam was appalled by that. That Franklin, and Franklin practically was one of the major figures in our history.
Mm-hmm.
and we got upset about lots of things about like Clinton and so on and so forth. But if you look at the founding fathers, Clinton was a saint.
No, I know.
Clinton was a saint.
They would
compared
not.
to them.
Sometimes in current politics, I hear people say like, our founding fathers would roll in their graves if they heard this.
I would never do this.
I think to myself, are you sure?
Go
I think they would
history
enjoy
books.
it.
Go read history books if you think they would roll over for anything that
Well,
we do these days.
which history books are you referring to? Because I know I learned none of this in the history books I grew up reading.
I
And
grew
that
up
is-
thinking, I grew up thinking the founding fathers were old, like 90, with their gray hair and their wigs. This whole,
No, they were eventually old.
were they?
Not
What
90,
age were they
though.
when they passed away?
Well, most of them in that time frame, most of people passed away between 50 and
Mhm.
70 and 75 and so on. But I think and that is, you just exemplified why we are here.
Mhm.
Because I have talked to, when we started this podcast series, I was talking to Hector about that. What is our least favorite subject in the school? History.
Mhm.
Because the history, the way it's taught to us, is just memorizing facts and dates and so on. That is the most boring thing. But once you bring the humanity in the history, who were these people truly?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
Hamilton, how he got taken care of by a married woman, and the husband actually tried to solicit money from him, and he paid them as well. Once you know they are real people with real problems
And real drama.
and
between
real
them.
drama, then it is like Kardashian. Who doesn't want to watch that?
I read that the founding fathers actually didn't like each other.
Oh, actually, many of them, they hated each other.
Yeah.
Not only they didn't like each other, but tell me a few juicy part from your side.
Do you want to start?
Well, do you want to tell them a little bit about some of the letters you heard about? And for some disclosure, we did a lot of research before this, but we also did some research by listening to other podcasts to make sure we were getting all of the juicy
Yes.
details. So,
By the way, if you really want to know about the founding father, go just buy or read some popular books about them. Don't go to any history book. Go read about their biography. Once you have read 5 or 6, I have read about 20 of them, then you make the connection, because each of them present one of them in their biopic, or maybe the biography of one of them, but then they all cross cover. And then you get the Kardashian level juicy parts.
Yeah, like Napoleon actually kind of sparked this. I know he's not one of our founding fathers, but I recently learned that Napoleon isn't what did they call him?
The short guy.
No,
He's
it's
not
short.
short.
They called him something like, well, Napoleon's not as short as people thought.
Yeah.
They
First of all, yeah. Napoleon was about 5 feet 7 or something.
So
6 or
taller than
7.
me.
Well, for his time, he was average.
Mhm.
For today, he was on the shorter side, but for his time was average. And one of the things that juicy thing about the Napoleon was that Napoleon was in 1800. Our American Revolution and most of our things was, in 1700. All the motion was in 1700. And what's important about Napoleon is that many of our founding fathers actually were totally connected to France and the French culture, because they had to fight British. And the British and French at that time, they were headbutting like crazy. So we were more pro-French. As a matter of fact, a Statue of Liberty is a present from France.
Yeah.
No, it gets important though. Those part of the France that we were connected to, they were practically toppled by the French Revolution. And so after the French Revolution and so on, most of our founding fathers, especially the Jefferson, they hated the Napoleon because they executed all the French. They totally changed the French culture and the politics and so on and so forth. So with the France, we are going back and forth, and but most of our founding father actually start not liking the Napoleon and his policies and his way of changing the French society, and that actually brought us closer back again to England.
Yeah, and I think that those people that didn't like him are the ones who started the rumor that he was a runt, because there were letters going back and forth, like saying how short and tiny Napoleon was.
Yeah. That they say Napoleon. What do they call it? We call it these days that somebody who's short and think he's big guy and
Short man syndrome.
short man syndrome. That's
Little man syndrome.
little man syndrome. Yeah, it's
Nothing
Napoleon
against the short
syndrome.
guys. Yeah,
Napoleon syndrome. We call it in other words Napoleon syndrome.
I can
Yeah.
see it.
I can
Yeah.
see it too. Yeah.
Oh, I want to tell something very interesting that actually about Napoleon. He had a tremendous positive effect on the entire revolution, renaissance, political renaissance, and the legal renaissance in Europe. As a matter of fact, if you don't know about that, go read about the Napoleonic Code, because before that, in most of Europe, the laws were just scattered, that one village has a different law than the other. And that was a huge problem there. He codified, unified that. And then the rest of the Europe and then United States caught up with that. Practically, we are in debt to him through what he gave to the Europe and then to us, this codified legal system that people are equal and the laws in one village is the same as the other village, because it wasn't before that.
Oh, well, and it's still not like that.
Well, we want it to be like that.
We're
And
closer.
yeah, I mean, you don't have super different laws in Texas than in New Hampshire or in.
Yeah.
Well, you should know that for the same offense in Napoleon time, you could be sentenced to death in one place and you go free in another place. So I'm talking about the really huge
Yeah, I
differences in
mean,
the legal
I'm not
code.
going to bring up like religion and stuff, but same with certain things.
I know, but more or less, I mean, I'm talking about significant differences that we don't have to deal with that. And that was one of the biggest part what the founding father did, that they created a system that can be challenged. And because it can be challenged, you never have to defy it completely. You can change the constitution within the constitution.
Yeah, you can
Sure,
make an
amend it.
amendment. Yeah.
Yeah. And I cannot overemphasize how visionary this system is, that it builds in itself that it's not complete. It's built in itself that is not perfect. So you can challenge it from within.
Yeah. And I think people get more of a say too, right?
Oh, absolutely. We never want to take it for granted, obviously, but at the end of the day, when anybody tell me, oh, I don't like the government, well, they're not from Mars. They're our people. We put them in place. If you don't like it, get engaged and change them. So, and that kind of visionary kind of view that our founding father, with all their deficiencies, what they put in place, a system that at the end of the day, they crowdsourced the American American government. But we want to talk about the juicy part.
Yeah. I want to
I'm
tell us some
ready.
of our president secrets.
Yeah, go ahead.
Should we
So-
start with our first president?
Let's
Yeah,
go
Hamid,
ahead.
who's our first president?
Yeah. Bill Clinton.
Oh,
Okay. Actually, I want to start it off with a question.
Go
Who
ahead.
do you think was the richest up until Donald Trump? Who do you think was the richest president?
Okay. Donald Trump is not the richest president for the okay. Okay. Now let's not go
So
there.
who do you think was the richest president, richest founding father?
From the founding fathers, I know that Jefferson was very rich. He was born rich and he was raised rich. I don't know about the Monroe. Washington definitely was not the richest president. He had lots of properties, but he donated the whole District of Columbia to the nation. So I would go either with Washington or Jefferson. So tell me, Washington.
Yeah.
But he wasn't that rich after he donated the whole District of Columbia.
Well, he was so rich, he actually didn't even ask for a salary to become president of the United States.
Yeah.
But he was kind of conniving.
Sneaky.
He found loopholes from what we found in about everything possible. So basically, as Amanda said, he didn't want a salary, but what did he want instead, Amanda?
He wanted his bills paid.
Not just any bills.
That is good one.
He wanted all his bills.
He
And
racked up a real bill for the US actually.
how much?
Guess how much he racked up in
Tell
his
me.
I want you to guess. Don't look
No.
at the
No, it's okay.
How
Okay.
much do you think he racked up in
In the today's or there?
in
Well,
their
we have both.
we have both. We have
We have the
Yeah.
we have math.
Well, in
His
today's
first year.
I would say in today's dollar, 1 million, 2 million.
You're so far off. No.
Really?
In their time,
he turned in the bill of $500,000,
their time.
which
That is a lot.
equivalents to over $18 million worth of bills. That
I
he
don't want to
turned
get
in.
paid. I don't want a salary. Can you pay my bills?
Yeah. So suddenly, he sounds like a very nice guy that wants to lead for
Mhm.
free.
Yeah. And actually, Alyssa and I, we really love our founding fathers. So we're actually going to ask you if you mind just paying our bills instead of giving us a salary.
I want to give back so much. I don't have time to pay my bills.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they kind of learned their lesson after that. And the next year they're like, this isn't
No,
happening.
he got a salary after that, which do you remember how they decided what his salary was going to be?
I don't remember.
Until 1920s, actually, the salaries were constantly at very low, actually, to a point that the grant was concerned to be from a general to become a president because
Mhm.
the salary was so low that he was thinking he cannot pay his bills.
It's
Yep.
still pretty low.
It's no, it's about, it used to be $300,000 and now $400,000. And I think they just bumped it to somewhere around $500,000 or $600,000. But, for what I care, they need to have a good salary.
No, they
because-
for sure need to have a good salary.
But most of the money they get actually after they're done with presidency, they go and they write a book and they
Mhm.
go, like if Clinton, they go and talk to a place, they get paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So being a president of the United States, you don't do it. This is like being a neurosurgeon.
Or like
if
an
you do it for money, you're doing it for wrong reason.
Being a president is like being an intern. You make your money after your internship is over.
Yes, in a way. I like the comparison.
So
Yeah.
how did they figure out his salary?
Well, he again found this loophole and said, you know what? I don't need a lot of percent. I will take 2% of the national budget
My God.
as my salary.
Very
And they
kind.
said, yeah, 2%, let's do it.
And that-
Until they figured out exactly how much 2% was
Of the national
of the national budget back, way
Okay,
back then.
okay.
But
Now, something that I read in history books make totally sense. Now, Hamilton was the finance guy. He put our financial structure together. And Hamilton loved Washington to death. And Washington protected him at nauseum. I mean, he protected him unbelievable. Now it makes sense that they made a scam together.
Little
That-
twerps.
That because Hamilton knew everything about the finances, he put our financial structure together. He made our Treasury Department
Yeah.
is a work of Hamilton. So they were in this together.
But Dr. Abbasi, we're just starting with the loopholes in George Washington.
Wow. It's getting
It
interesting.
is. I
He's
don't.
got more money coming.
Yeah,
Go,
we
go.
can't cover all of it. We keep going, Alyssa, about George's money.
His mom real fast.
I was going to talk about his mom. I wasn't sure if we should cover it. So we all have mom drama, right?
That makes us human. We all have
Right.
mothers.
Who doesn't have mom drama? Well, George actually had some really embarrassing mom drama. His mom loved to embarrass him publicly.
She was pretty greedy too.
Yeah, she called Virginia, the state of Virginia, and she called George. She wanted George to send a lot of money to her constantly, obviously for the mom. But she called Virginia and she's like, can you guys send me some money?
She wanted a stipend because her son was the president of the United States.
George
To
Washington.
a state.
To the
a sta-
state of Virginia,
Yeah.
the state in which she lived.
Can you guys send my children some money?
Well,
Because I'm
George
their father?
Washington, George Washington stopped that right away. He's
Oh.
like, do not send my mom any money. We can pay for her. That's embarrassing. He literally said it's
Yeah,
embarrassing.
he was embarrassed that his mother asked the state of Virginia for money.
And especially federal state.
Yeah, and
That is something.
Right. And especially when she didn't even really gift him with the best genetics.
Well, let's not eat. Yeah.
He doesn't really have the best genetics. And that's one of the reasons why he has no teeth,
Mm-hmm.
no original teeth.
Yeah.
So they ended up making teeth for him out of hippo
Wow.
teeth. They shaved
Well,
them.
let's talk about what did they teach you when you were in elementary school?
Wouldn't
When I was in elementary school,
Did they
taught-
teach you that in elementary school, Robert?
Yes,
Where
they
you
did.
grew up?
Yes, they
They
did.
taught you George
No.
Washington had wooden teeth?
No, but believe it or not, probably a Persian educated person knows the American president more than a.
they probably know
Probably
more
true.
truth too.
Yeah, well, no, but move on. Tell me,
Well,
Well, you were right.
wouldn't they-
Wood. That is what
Yeah.
we were always kind of told too. But with some research and a little dark history, we were kind of established that there were two main quote ingredients to this.
There's a
homemade
rumor
teeth.
about the slave teeth, but
the
that I
slave teeth,
think
no, that was true. It came after. I think the hippo teeth were
The ivory. of
Ivory
the
with
hippo.
gold screws or
Yeah.
something like that. And then the slave teeth were replaced
Later
replacement.
on.
do you see how far we have come? I
Hmm.
just got a crown, and they did 3D scanned my teeth, and then they made a 3D printed crown just for me. 300 years ago, I would have had to kill the
Yeah,
hippopotamus
I know.
to get a tooth.
Isn't that something?
Yeah,
He did. I don't remember the amount, but I think he paid a little bit for them. Obviously not the value.
Yeah, they
But-
did. Based on our research, that they say that Washington did pay for the slaves' teeth.
and
it
then they
was-
extracted.
Yep, they
it.
extracted one.
While they're awake.
One. That
Well,
I
they
know
didn't
so.
have anesthesia then.
Yeah.
But they were still alive, is what I mean.
Oh yeah, I know, but anesthesia, meaning
Mhm.
that. But that is
Well, he might
how
have
much should I pay you for one of your tooth, Alyssa?
I mean, I think you could pay me more to give you my tooth than for me to wear your tooth. So
Oh, okay.
I would rather have my tooth in your mouth than your tooth in my mouth. Nothing against your hygiene.
No, but you know what? I'm the same way. We are on the same thing. I rather have your tooth in my mouth than my tooth in your mouth.
I'll just
So
take the
that's-
money.
Hand it over.
Hamilton here. Yeah.
So, no, but it is imagine that that people without anesthesia, because they didn't have anesthesia, with the crude tool. Okay.
Well, they didn't have anesthesia, but they did have something we've talked about it. And something else we've talked about in the past,
Chloroform.
which
They didn't.
cannabis.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't help much with the acute pain, though.
No, it doesn't, but maybe it can help you for
Alcohol
that
can
you're
help
going
you more. Alcohol can knock you out, but cannabis, that's the actually beauty of cannabis, that it can give you lots of
Yeah.
this emotional euphoria and so on, or other things, without really changing your level of awakeness and awareness and so on.
Mhm.
So yeah, but either way,
Well,
imagine somebody.
Guess what though?
yeah, we're going somewhere with that.
George Washington has affiliations with both alcohol and cannabis.
He actually, there's not a lot of evidence, but not a lot of evidence disputing it either,
Mm.
that he might have been a pothead. He was growing cannabis on his farm.
No, but
And he was
Mm.
trying to find like the technology to separate the female and male plants, which would make the cannabis have more THC.
yeah, old George.
And do you
My
know
God.
who he did this with?
Take a wild guess.
His best friend and founding father.
It wasn't Jefferson, because Jefferson didn't like him. Yeah, it was
Frenemies.
Jefferson?
It was Thomas Jefferson.
Really? Wow.
Freak, you know
Yeah.
that.
No, Jefferson, actually, Washington never wanted Jefferson to become a president. And when he became president, Jefferson became a president, one of his first acts was to cut off all the people that Washington put in place, including Hamilton. So this being friends and enemies actually helped us to put check and balances in our system. So even that part was useful to our system. But so Jefferson was a pothead too.
Stories stories tell us that they actually used to like have friendly exchanges of weed. They would like give them back and forth to each other.
No, weed was at that time. There's a reason to call it weed. Now, at that time, there was no law against any of these drugs. There wasn't any.
Sorry, you just got banned from live.
What is that?
I
We're talking
don't-
about the weed.
Probably.
No,
Talking bad about our. Well,
we're talking about the weed. That's why we got
I'm
banned
still on
from-
live,
Oh, okay.
and I'm getting love.
Okay.
Someone just said they
I'm
love
going to
me.
restart it again.
Yeah, restart it.
Oh, wow.
What does it say?
It says signs of alcohol. What?
That's because you didn't change it. Remember, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
Oh. No, I don't agree with this thing. Something else.
Could you imagine if Hamid was a founding father?
That would be a good one.
Oh, I know. I don't doubt that at all.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, let's go back. I'm going to restart it. Signs of alcohol.
Yeah, because
Only-
We
I
have,
have some really, at least one or two last juicy topics on our very first president. And I know you want to be here for this one.
What?
yeah.
Right now, hold on.
Love you too, James.
It says life access
Janie.
suspended.
For how long?
Says a post from March 10th. Oh, I guess-
Oh, you're
What does that
wow.
do?
Hey, look, you better like that.
Yeah, like it before you close it. Thanks.
Okay.
It's me.
We're actually getting into the juicier stuff,
Okay,
actually, as a
okay,
matter of
okay.
fact. I don't know, would you consider it bribery?
I don't know if I would necessarily say bribery, but I think I'd be bribed by it.
Coercion.
So coercion is probably a better word.
Yeah, tell-
What about?
You know, our
Washington.
lovely friend alcohol here had a special place at the voting polls at the very first presidential election. You want to know who bought it?
Well, I know that the Washington was creating whiskey. He was a whiskey producer.
We're
Well, not
there
only
yet.
that, he was actually supplying alcohol at like the polls to get
You
people
do-
drunk and vote for him. But explain the story.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm gonna
Nice.
see if I can find these actual numbers because I found them actually really cool.
Mhm.
Right here, you can see that President Washington, before he was a president, ordered and brought 144 gallons of liquor alcohol to the voters. And he was afraid that wasn't going to be enough as he only allowed 2 liters of alcohol per person. But they said he won by a
Okay,
landslide.
that's why he-
2 liter per person? 2 liter of liquor per person. It can put them in coma. They cannot vote with
Yeah,
that.
he won.
And he won. Because
Because-
all he has to do is say, hey, I have the magic bottle here. Here's 2 free liters.
Right.
Oh, they
Vote
didn't
for
have to
me.
drink it. They
No.
could take it with them.
Well,
I
I
see.
Yeah.
Can't
Alyssa-
confirm or deny.
Alyssa,
No,
in my
what-
opinion,
What year did the bribery get banned in US? You would be surprised.
I would say the 70s. I'm gonna say
Yes,
1970s.
1960s, 70s. Before that, it was not illegal to bribe a public official and so on. So, theoretically or, literally, that he didn't do anything illegal.
No, he wasn't
No.
breaking their laws.
No,
just
he wasn't
our
breaking
laws.
their laws. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought if I showed up to a government voting
With
area,
with the
yeah,
two-
with 2 leaders in both hands saying, I got this from President, whatever. Do you think that they would even allow, are you
Even-
allowed
even
to
a
vote
glass-
intoxicated?
I was gonna say, even a glass of wine showing up to those polls, they're gonna kick you out.
Okay, what year did the woman get right to vote in US?
Like the 80s or something.
No, suffrage.
Yes, what, 60s?
No, not
40s?
60s, in 1910, 20s, something
Wow,
like that. Yeah.
wow.
Now,
I'm
so
embarrassed.
just about 100 years ago, actually, African American got the privilege to vote before women in the United States. So
African American men?
men, obviously. So, so don't be surprised with the custom of that time. This is 300 years ago. And again, we are going to say about that Jefferson had a slave. He slept with the slaves. He had illegitimate children with slaves. And the Hamilton had the affair here and there, Washington and so on, bribed and so on. But if you start looking at the people in the history with our eyes from 2023,
Mhm.
every single of them is going to be a criminal.
Oh,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Every single,
Well, John Hancock, right? John Hancock was a smuggler.
Yep.
He was smuggling tea.
During the
So-
Boston Tea Party
yeah.
to avoid taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone's a criminal at some point.
And even, even the most prolific figures in the history, like Mother Teresa. Should I start telling you stories about
No,
Mother Teresa?
Gandhi.
Gandhi. So don't look at what we discussed about the founding father with the eyes of 2023. We are neither apologetic about what they did, nor we are condoning or
Yeah.
condemning what they
We're
did.
just bringing the human
Side of it.
fact. Yeah.
So there are still people who made this country what it is. But that is the beauty of it, that you can be a random person with a random person vices and flaws, and you still can put something wonderful together. So what else do we want to talk about? I think we sort of,
Well, you
can
just kind of spilled all the tea on
All the
of
tea.
them. You just
what?
You're like, okay, yeah, Hamilton.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, there are more on that.
One specific,
Who's the cleanest one?
the cleanest founding father?
Yeah.
Cleanest as in like physically clean or cleanest as in
Cleanest
record?
hands, I'm guessing.
I mean,
Like
cleanest,
cleanest closet.
yeah.
No skeletons.
No skeletons.
all of
I
them
know
are
not
skeletons.
Jefferson.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say more. Is that a founding father?
Mm.
Adams?
Adam. He was a Puritan, and Puritan New England culture and so on. But even in his personal life, if you look at that, he was I would say that I would rather spend time with Franklin and Jefferson any time of the day than with Adam.
Yeah,
He was a bore.
I think I would love to spend time with George Washington. I
George
wonder-
Washington? No, he was a little, there was some indication that he might have been a little autistic about me. He didn't talk a lot. He didn't, interacted a lot with, with the social.
Yeah.
But if you want to have a party, you want to have that party with
Jefferson.
and Franklin. That is the people
Well,
you want to have.
I'm bringing Ben Frank to every single party
Yeah.
I go to.
I might even be
Yeah.
Ben Frank for Halloween.
yeah, that is actually,
Spirit
you should do
animal.
that. No, so Adam was cleanest, but he was the most boring
Was
of them all as well.
what would you say is like the most exciting fact you know about Adams? Because now there's the beer named after him. I don't know if that has anything to
Yes, Sam. That's Sam Adam.
Yeah.
That's a,
do. Oh,
we are talking about a different
yeah.
Adam.
I'm not a beer drinker.
Yeah. Now, things that excite me are different than things that excite you. We had this crazy people, and we have more sane people, and that if every founding father was like Adam, we would be something like a very boring country, very little innovation, very little experimentation, and so on. But if we were all like Franklin, we would be just a crazy kind of place as well. So I think what this interaction, what was for me interesting, that interaction between Adam and the rest of the founding father, that once in a while it put a stop, time out. Let's come to be more sane. But I forgot I didn't want to live in a country that is founded by just Adams.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fair.
I
But
think. Go ahead.
I was gonna kind of go on down the aisle of the crazy a little bit, if
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Well, I know Hamid knows this, or Dr. Bassi, but back in the day, if people had some sort of mental illness, they were seen as evil or crazy, or they would do all
Possessed.
Yeah.
possessed, right?
Especially in New England, especially where Adam used to.
Well, it turns out that Patrick Henry had a wife who suffered from some sort of mental illness.
It's not clear, right? What her mental.
Yeah,
illness
I
is?
didn't find exactly what it was. They defined it as mental illness. But back, kind of back in that day, it didn't necessarily matter what it was. But do you know what he did to his wife?
I hope not lobotomy.
He did not. He locked her in their basement for 4 years until she finally died. because
Mm.
she never got to
Yeah.
see people or breathe fresh air again. It stated that she still got food and she still was able to survive, but
But again, let's looking at this with the eyes of 2023, that's a crazy,
Yeah.
unbelievable, unhuman thing. But at that time, they didn't know if it's a demon that is
Mhm.
doing that. They didn't know if it can go from one person to another person. And again, we should look at the things in their context of where the historical event happened.
mhm.
I have actually a lots of my TikToks contents about that. In every good person is a there's an evil side, and in every evil person there is a good side. Did you know that the Gobble, the propaganda minister, he was the best father ever, up to the point that he killed all his children because he was afraid. But he killed his children because he thought the Russians are going to tear them apart and feed them to the dogs.
Mm.
He want them to die of a more painless pain,
Mhm.
death and so on. So this is what is being a human. In the most saints, there's an evil, and in the most evil person, there's a hint of humanity.
Yeah.
Kind of
I
like the
agree.
yin and yang.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
a
all
little good in the bad and a little bad in the
just
good.
percentage.
Yeah, for sure.
Percentages.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What you just talked about though, like the advancements in technology and medicine, it kind of reminds me of when people I know I say this all the time, but your LinkedIn create drama on LinkedIn and they're like,
Yeah.
I've never seen this before. This has to be fake. It reminds me of how George Washington actually passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, he passed away because he had an illness which nowadays would have totally been small,
Preventable.
survivable. Like you probably would have been sick for a day or two. But back then, they thought that if you were sick, you had dirty blood. So
Mhm.
George Washington actually passed away because he lost 40% of his blood.
And he wasn't that old actually when
No.
he passed away. How old was he?
I don't know what age.
I think early 60s. We always see him with this
Gray
old
hair.
beard, gray hair and so on, but he wasn't that old. God's sake, I'm
But-
getting to that age.
Yeah.
We look back at some of these pictures and we're like, they're so young, but they look so old, but they all have the same wigs and hair.
Yeah, the
But we had
lights.
talked about in a very, very previous podcast that kind of we see people as older or gray hair as wisdom, as being smarter. Do you think that's the reason as to maybe why they would age themselves a little bit?
The political parties at that time were Whigs. Literally, they called themselves Whigs and Democrats.
Mm.
So this Whigs was this traditional takeover from England, where that is and by the way, lawyers and the judges in England still have wigs in the thing. They almost look funny.
I know.
Like
It's
clowns.
fun.
They look like clowns.
They look like they're pretending to be a judge.
Yeah, they look like a TV show.
Mhm.
But so and obviously I don't know what the background to that tradition is. That is why many of our founding fathers are depicted with the wigs, because they're part of the political party that they called themselves the Whigs.
Well, I also thought it was because like they didn't bathe as much back then and people had lice and they
Oh,
didn't know
that
how
is
to
a
get rid of the
juicy
lice.
story right there. That comes from 17 and 1600 France, that people of nobility, they wouldn't. That's why they have those things that they can scratch themselves, they powder themselves and so on.
Yeah.
But that comes as well. We had another thing. You remember when we talked about the alcohol, that water was dirty.
Mhm.
Water was dirty. You would harm yourself more with, you see, these elements are growing
Yeah.
together. But that is a different story. I want to really talk about the medicine of the 17th and 18th century. You would be surprised about how many interesting things you can. But yeah, that was longer before, but people didn't used to bathe as like us, bathing every day. Where do you get the water to bathe every day? You would bathe, and then 10 other people would bathe in that water, and then tomorrow you would bathe in the same water again.
Yeah. I think
So-
like the King of England, didn't he bathe
And
3 times in his
Yeah.
life?
and when she talks that she doesn't want to have my teeth in her mouth and so on, so you should have lived in And 300 years ago, you should see there is a historical depiction of how Vikings, after the dinner, what they did. So this is a historical figure, and you should come back to that. That this Arab guy goes to north, he was abandoned, goes to north and sees the European hygiene, which is for Arabs, that was disgusting. That was like that these Vikings, they wash their hand, they spit in the water, they put it in their mouth, turn it around and spit it out, and then the next time it goes around, and then they keep that water at the end, they use it again. Okay.
I
so-
knew I didn't like the Vikings.
Yeah.
So talking about their hygiene at that time, I think they were pretty okay for their time.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
surprised any of them had teeth.
Well,
Did they?
I don't think.
Oh, I don't even want to
It is a
know.
rare thing that we keep oral teeth. Now, we cannot talk about this without talking few juicy things about Jefferson. More
Okay, I'm
detail.
down.
More detail. So, what is the juiciest thing, Alyssa, you know about Jefferson?
The juiciest thing I know about Jefferson has to do with after his wife died and he had an affair with his 14-year-old sister-in-law. They ended up having 6 children together. Did you
That
know
is
that?
14 years old.
She was 14 years old.
He would be going to prison for a long time in
It
2023.
gets juicier.
Go.
The sister-in-law, which was his wife's sister, was a slave. Which
How does that work?
this basically means that his father-in-law had a child with another slave, and that is who he then had children with.
And which was
Wow.
not unusual. Lots of people had sex with slaves and had illegitimate children. And there was even in South, there were laws to separate these two group of
Mhm.
children, that the slave children, believe it or not, they didn't inherit anything.
That's what I
They were
was going
slave.
to tell you.
Yeah.
He had 6 children with this woman, and not one of them got to live free in their lifetime.
And then that is one of our main founding fathers.
Yeah,
So
and
go figure.
And then, but not all of his children that were slaves ended up being slaves forever. Do you want to talk about his wife? His
Well,
French?
Well, he had many affairs, and as a matter of fact, he one of his main woman of interest was a slave,
Mhm.
and they had children together, and he took that wife to England at the time that slavery was illegal, was already illegal in England, and the wife didn't want to come back. And even though he promised him when they come back, he will free her and so on, she did not come back because,
Was she free there already?
well, in England she was. So, and that is I think a really sad part of our history. With all the good things that we have a dark spot in the heart of our creation.
Mhm.
But as well, if you go back, you see there was no way they could have created United States if they would have abolished slavery from the start. That it
Well,
would have
because-
been dead in the bud because the southern state would have never gone for it.
Well, and not only that, I think a lot of the original people that came here didn't have the skills that they needed. For instance, I know people that came to like Plymouth and so on,
Yeah.
or Jamestown, they didn't even learn how to farm ahead of time. They were planning on trading with the Native Americans, and then they starved to death throughout the winter and started
Are you
eating
talking
each
about
other.
pilgrims?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They ate each other?
Yeah.
The pilgrims actually ate each other.
They couldn't
So
couldn't farm.
Yeah, they didn't even think to learn how to farm first, and they actually dressed as if they were still going to be there in England, not in our hot summers that we have in
Mhm.
Virginia.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well-
we wouldn't have even been able to do it because we didn't have the skill.
Yeah, but I think they pretty soon in northern part of the United original colonies, the slavery was abolished. I
Mhm.
think this was more like a southern thing that the whole industry, the whole lifestyle was depending on labor.
Yeah.
But having said that is interesting that many of these people, many of our founding fathers, they were slaveholders.
I think only two founding fathers were not slave owners, and they were father and son.
Okay. And yes, they are. Do you know who they were?
I'm slipping. No.
Adams.
Duh.
Adams. They were Puritan. Slavery was
I
against
should
their
know.
religion. And we have
Right.
two Adams, father Adam and son Adam.
Okay.
They were, and that is, you see out there, it's the balance of crazy and sane, religious. Did you know most of our founding fathers, they were atheists? Did
Yeah,
you know that?
Amanda told me that today, actually.
I was gonna ask when
Most of them, except
Adams.
Adams.
there you go. But
Adams family.
okay.
Dun-dun-dun.
But
Sorry.
are you guys done, or should we have a musical now?
No, go.
Okay. When did we In God We Trust start being used in the US?
Oh my God, that was. You want to guess, Alice?
As long as I've been alive.
1950s. That was
I'm
never
not
part of
wrong.
our.
Mhm.
That is not a part of our original thing. As a matter of fact, they wrote with the separation of the church and the state in mind, because if it was up to Adam, the Bible would be our constitution.
Mhm.
But it was not up to Adam. It
Mm.
was up to majority of our founding fathers. They were that French enlightened people, and that's another book you need to read. You have to understand France and the French culture to understand why our constitution is so strictly separation of the religion and the state. So one of the beautiful things about Jefferson, well, he was an avid book reader. He had one of the biggest libraries, private libraries, and he was such a big fan of European enlightenment, like Voltaire, like Rousseau, and so on and so forth. And if you read their thinking, you understand why Jefferson and Hamilton and many others, they kept our constitution very secular. It is interesting that most of the contribution of the religious thoughts in our laws and so on, these are just 50 to 70-year-old kind of events.
Mhm.
This was not part of, and anybody who wants you to believe that our founding fathers had anything to do with religion, you should go read about Franklin.
Or listen to the separation of church and state.
Or just listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
So, and this is again not assigning value to that, but our founding fathers and our constitution was very clear about that. You practice religion in the churches, and you run the government in Washington D.C. and in the politics, in the assemblies.
Yep. And they also made it clear that Washington, D.C. will never become a state.
And that has as well another thing. They didn't want that one state has, has more power over other states, and that is as well was revolutionary. The idea that how do we create a federal government that it's stable, that like even 300 years later, people in the 50 years ago or so, Syria and Iraq and Egypt, they tried to make a federation of Arab countries. It fell apart because Egypt got too strong. Bangladesh and Pakistan tried to do together, and they fell apart because one part had this head of the government, capital, and became 300 years ago, they figured out that wouldn't work. I mean, that is
It's revolutionary.
That is revolutionary.
And what's the
Truly is.
number one reason that they say we need to study history? So
Not
that we
to
don't
repeat
repeat it. Exactly.
Mhm.
So if we can find that out 300 years ago, there's no point or no
Mhm.
reason that we should.
They didn't study history.
Yep.
That's all what it is. And the reason they didn't study it because it was so boring. So
Yeah,
that is
make
why you should
history
listen to
fun.
us.
Make
Yeah.
history fun again.
Yes.
So to close off,
I love that. Make history fun again.
New t-shirt idea coming out Monday.
no red ones.
MHF.
MHF.
MHF it is.
A. Yeah, don't forget the A
A,
again. Make it fun
again.
Again,
A.
MHFA, MHFA.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Make
Nailed it.
history fun again.
So to close out, our founding fathers were just humans. And those of you who say it, you're right. They would roll if they saw what was going on now.
So this was very interesting.
And
And-
we didn't even cover all of them
Oh,
or all of the
we
tea.
didn't even
can go on
cover
and
it.
on.
2% of
Mhm.
the what it is. But if you're interested, there are books out there. There are the other avenues, and I'm sure we will return to this at some point.
Yeah, we'll probably have a part 2.
Yeah, we should talk about the wives of the founders.
I would love that. And I would also love to do a podcast on these 2 women pirates that I just learned about.
We should talk about the wives of the presidents.
I was about to say that the evolution of the first ladies, just because
Yeah.
of, we all know
Jackie
that
Kennedy.
women in office can do crazy things. Yeah, we don't need to get into that now, but
Mhm.
But let's definitely come back about I like the title you suggested.
sure.
Evolution of the first ladies.
Yep,
That's it.
got it.
Okay.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks, guys.
For Essence, I'm Dr. Abbasi.
I'm Amanda